Be the first to know what's new on TJC. Breaking news, award-winning movies, exciting documentaries, and original series. Sign up for our free bi-weekly email program guide at tjctv.com.
Welcome to the Salon. Coming up, why was this rabbi arrested at the Kotel? Should the Jewish community make universal preschool education a priority? Assessing feminism 50 years after the feminine Mystique. And who's your favorite Purim heroine? It's all happening right now at the Salon.
Hello, I'm Jane Eisner, editor-in-chief of The Forward and Forward.com. Welcome to the Salon.
And I'm Rachel Sklar of ChangeTheRatio.com.
Rachel, we have an awesome lineup today. With us is Esther Goodhart, who is the Oriental beauty with a yiddishe cop. She's a comedian and Hebrew educator. Jordana Horn is a contributing editor at the Jewish parenting website Kveler.com, and I am happy to say, a columnist for The Forward and a mother of four. And Rabbi Robyn Fryer Bodzin, who is the spiritual leader of Israel Center of Conservative Judaism in Queens. So welcome, everyone. I'd like to start with you, Robyn, because the Women of the Wall has been in the news once again. These are women, both Israeli and American, who try to pray at the Kotel, at the Western Wall, every Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of every month, and oftentimes run into problems. You were there at what is supposed to be the beginning of the happy month of Adar. Please tell us your story.
I happened to be in Israel on Rosh Chodesh Adar. I was on a trip, a rabbinic cabinet trip from Jewish Federations of North America, and I was in Jerusalem, 15 minutes away from the Kotel, and about 15 of us decided to join Women of the Wall. 2 women, and the rest were men who were there behind and next to us. The davening was beautiful. We davened.
So I just want to make sure. So the men were also in the women's section?
No, they were on their section, they were right beside the mechitza, as close as possible.
So the dividing line between the men's and the women's
Absolutely.
section.
And our colleagues and our friends and the supporters of Women of the Wall, they were actually listening to the female prayer leader. So when we would say a blessing, they would say amen to it on their side, because they're used to davening in an egalitarian setting. So we davened a beautiful shacharit, and we sang the beautiful praises of Hallel, which is done on Rosh Chodesh. And then, as is the custom, this group that meets, they leave the Kotel and they move around the side to Robinson's Arch for the Torah service.
So, and Robinson's Arch, we should just explain for viewers who aren't aware of it, is next to the Kotel, not quite the Kotel, but the part that's supposed to be reserved for egalitarian prayer.
Right. It's in the Old City as well, in the Jewish quarter. I was very excited. I was supposed to be reading Torah that morning. I had practiced and practiced and practiced, even though I knew it already, because I was with a distinguished group of women. And as soon as we left through the metal detectors that are right by that gate in the Old City, a police officer asked for my papers. She said, Tudat Zahut, which is Hebrew for identity papers. And I said, I don't have any, I'm Canadian. And then she said, passport. She asked for my passport. And I had seen a different officer take someone else's papers away as well. And then someone whispered in my ear, just go with it. Because I guess, getting in a fight with a police officer on your last day of Israel is not always the best thing to do. So there are 3 of us at this point. We followed this police officer to a small police station.
I have to ask you, were you wearing a talit? Were you wearing a prayer
My
shawl?
talit was actually, I usually wear it just over my whole body, but I was wearing it like a scarf so as not to cause attention to me. The talit that I wear every morning, it's white, it's gray, it's subdued. It's not bright and colorful. It doesn't call attention to me. And I was also wearing a hat on my head because it was cold, so I wasn't even wearing a kippah that was obvious for the whole world to see. I didn't want to call attention. I knew that in the past, Women of the Wall had situations where men would throw chairs over or dirty diapers over, and I know, right? And I didn't want that to happen to me. I wanted to go and daven, and then go to my slew of meetings that I had planned that day, which didn't happen.
Because
I spent the morning in the police station with 10 other women who were detained.
Under what, on what grounds?
We were detained for wearing a talit, which may violate public safety. May violate public safety.
Of all the things to violate public safety in Israel, I'm not sure that's one of them.
Yeah, how do you violate public safety?
I'm with you on that. You know, when I came back to New York, on Shabbat morning, the president was sitting next to me, and I said, "Hey, do you feel like your safety is being violated?" You know, we were both there in our talitot. And I'm with you on that. I'm with you 100%. I'm missing what's going on there.
I'm missing something. You know, when I went to Israel, the one stamp in my passport, I went to the wall and I said my baruchas, and people looked at me and asked who ordered Chinese, because this is this face at the wall. But there was no incident. I could pray, and I put my little piece of paper in the cracks. And
but I mean, I think that, you know, someone who goes there frequently, what I've noticed over the years is that the men's side seems to be bigger. And the mechitza is longer, and the women's part is shrinking.
Right, and wasn't it only 1994 that they established even separate entry points for women and men, that even the approach to the wall shouldn't be mixed? Yes. You
but
should
isn't
separate
this
from
public
the get-go.
space? I don't understand.
Well,
Can't
actually,
everybody come?
my understanding is that the government of Israel ceded control of the Kotel
To the Heritage Center.
to the Heritage Center, which is run by Orthodox, or depending on your point of view, ultra-Orthodox people. And it is considered actually not public space. It's considered a synagogue. That's the argument that I've been told, that it is essentially an Orthodox synagogue, and so it follows the rules of an Orthodox synagogue.
But can't anybody go to an Orthodox synagogue and pray?
That's true, but I mean, we couldn't. It would be wrong for us to show up in the men's section wearing, you know, sleeveless dress.
Right, but we weren't in the men's section. We were in the women's section wearing a talit, and 2 days prior, I had been in an Orthodox synagogue in Jerusalem wearing a talit. You know, I was outside. I was trying a different experience. I went to Shira Chadasha, which is an Orthodox synagogue with a mechitza, with a divider. I was even given an aliyah. I was called up to the Torah and given blessings on the women's side. I was never going to go on to the men's side. That wasn't part of the experience. I daven with a talit. That's what I do.
The issue is that there are certain areas in Israel which are de facto under control of the ultra-Orthodox. So behaviors that would be called out in Tel Aviv are perfectly natural and tolerated in Me'ashrim and by the wall. And that's really what's at play here, is this sort of two different standards depending on, you know, level of religion.
Was it your talit that offended everybody? Because I went when it was very, very hot in August, and before you go to the wall, there was a table with tablecloths, because the women had to cover
up. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And well, listen, you could have had a picnic on what they were giving us, but why did they pick on you? Did it because we covered ourselves with that? Is that not?
I was dressed completely modest that day. I was wearing a skirt. I was wearing a turtleneck even, and something on top of that. And there were 200 women who were on the women's side in this prayer service with these women of the wall that were supporting them. I mean, some might have been there to protest, but I went to daven. And more than half of us did don a talit that morning. I still don't know why I was one of the 10 women that was detained. I just don't know.
So I'd like to ask about this in a broader sense. I mean, clearly this is about the question of religious pluralism at what is considered the holiest site for all Jews, not just Israelis. And yet, I have to say that when I go to Israel and talk about this with my Israeli friends, who are mostly secular, certainly in Israeli terms they are, they don't really care. Honestly, most of them live in Tel Aviv. They don't even go to Jerusalem. If they go to Jerusalem, they don't go to the Kotel.
There's a whole subculture of people in Tel Aviv who hate Jerusalem.
Yep.
That's what I was struck by when I visited. All the Tel Aviv people who are like, I hate Jerusalem.
They say the air is so thick there.
But I think that there's a real question that we in America, who believe in the right of women to wear a talit and pray there, have to ask ourselves, which is this the right fight? Is this the right place to have this fight over religious pluralism? Or should it be about other issues, about divorce, about marriage, about conversion? I don't know, and I really struggle with this. On the one hand, it's this great symbol. On the other hand, I feel like I care about it a whole lot more than the people who live there.
If you're asking, is this the right fight, and then reeling off a few other areas where perhaps energies could be better spent in the same fight, then there's something larger going on. If the fight needs to be addressed in this area, and this area, and this area, and this area. So I think that, you know, when you get to the point of strategizing over which battle to pick, then you know that you have a larger war.
Oh, and I wouldn't characterize it as a war, but I do think that there's a movement here to try to infuse a more religious pluralism into Israeli culture, law, you know, what have you. I don't know, Robyn, what do you think?
I think a lot of those fights are being fought, but those are being fought through the inside, through politics, through the Knesset, through the government. The Masorti movement and the Reform movement together are really trying to fight from the inside to bring issues such as conversion and divorce at the forefront. I think they're just being fought in two different venues.
Were you there with Sarah Silverman?
Susan.
Was it? So I'm sorry,
Yeah.
right? Susan Silverman.
Although I'd
Sarah's
love
sister.
to see Sarah Silverman there.
So Sarah Silverman's sister, Susan Silverman,
And her niece,
lives,
Hillel.
Right.
yes,
And you were
lives
there
in
at
Israel.
that same time when
We were detained together. In fact, I was using Hillel's phone to get my messages out to the world that I was stuck so that people could know.
I do think that there's something both special and bedeviling about this issue in Jerusalem, because it also has to do with how much right do diaspora Jews have to speak out and try to change things there.
Right. Well, if Israel is truly the home of all Jewish people in a symbolic sense, then surely people should have the right to appropriate whatever symbols they find appropriate to daven. You know, there are so many more ways to practice Judaism in the diaspora at this point than there are in Israel. Because in Israel, the more religious right has appropriated this monopoly on practicing Judaism, whereas it's a very different and vivid and engaged circumstance here. And do I think that Israel could benefit from importing a little bit of North American pluralism? I do. Do I think it's an imposition? You know, the tourist dollars aren't seen as an imposition for some reason. You know, so, and not only that, but the idea of Jews as being strong political advocates for Israel in the diaspora, that's seen as something that's necessary. Well, then you need to hear the voices on everything and not just things in which we happen to agree. Look, I mean, you know, Jews disagree. I mean, that shouldn't come as much of a surprise to anybody.
We wouldn't have a show.
I know.
I'm not sure I agree with that.
Right. We'll take it outside.
I'm wondering if we can move ahead to another topic. At the State of the Union address this year, President Obama talked about what I think, at least I believe, is a really laudable goal to try to provide universal preschool education for every child who's 4 years old and then older. And it got me thinking about our obligations to provide this kind of education within the Jewish sphere. And the truth is that really, as far as I could tell, only about a third of Jewish kids, maybe slightly higher percentage in New York, go to Jewish preschool because it's really expensive in a lot of cases, or not available, or not something that's very appealing. And I'm just wondering, should we take this national push for more early childhood education and make it a goal in the Jewish world?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yes. Because
Okay, then.
I teach Hebrew, and it seems that my house has become Temple Beth Esther, because a lot of
What are the ages of your students?
I teach from 3rd grade on to 7th grade, and pretty much I'm teaching for bar and bat mitzvah. And when you come to me, I'm also teaching about history, culture, traditions. I'm teaching everything because my feeling is, for me, the reason I'm Jewish, I converted to Judaism, is the whole package. And when I studied, it wasn't just learning Hebrew so that I could become a bat mitzvah. It was, what is the entire history of being Jewish, and that I accepted. So I'm like Ruth. You know, I said to my husband's family, my people are your family. much to the chagrin of my father, the minister. But however, I'm finding that the earlier you study, the more you retain the information. It's like when I taught 6th grade and I asked the kids who was the prophet that was swallowed by the whale, their answer, Pinocchio. And I'm wondering what part of their education,
I missed that one.
you know, we're always reviewing the story of Jonah and the whale.
Yeah.
And so when I ask the question, their answer is never the right, because they're only learning Hebrew for bar mitzvah. And I feel that the younger they start their education, the more they retain it. Because it seems 4th grade is when they become jaded. They don't want to do it. And the parents.
4th grade? They're such a cynical 4th grader. Oh,
there's so much in my community. There's so much other more fun things to do. Like
but you know something, that's exactly to the point of Jewish nursery school. Jewish nursery school makes being Jewish fun. Kids,
they remember
kids
that.
associate Judaism with fun, which is not something that comes so easily later on. And it's an opportunity that I think that we do need to seize.
It's also that time, 4 years old, the parents are really into the kid. And they really want to be a part of the education, whereas later on, they just throw them.
You know, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We just got a submission to Kveller talking about a parent who, her attitude toward Judaism was, I wouldn't say dismissive, but I would say that, you know, she was bat mitzvah up and out. And seeing her child come home from her Jewish preschool and seeing the child make the motions over her birthday cake, over her candles, and just taking such joy in being Jewish made her think maybe we should bring being Jewish into our home.
The traditions are fun. They are fun. They're lovely.
Does your synagogue have a nursery school?
We don't have a nursery school. We don't have that age. But I was going to say, just when we used to say it's too expensive to travel to Israel, and then we had philanthropists come on board, and we have 18 to 26-year-olds for 13 years going to Israel for free for 10 days.
That's a great point.
And they come back, and they're engaged in the Jewish world.
Yes.
In some way or other. They at least know they're Jewish. It's there with them. They had that birthright experience. They can reconnect to other birthright people. If we can get the philanthropists on board for preschool, which is unattainable, do you know how many kids will come home and say, I was the Shabbat Ima today, or I was the Shabbat helper today. We lit candles at school. Can we do it now? And they'll bring the Judaism back into the home for these parents who somehow it's not a value for them, but if it comes from their kids, it'll be a value.
And I think it also really creates community. I mean,
it does.
I was fortunate to be able to have all my daughters in Jewish preschool at our synagogue, and it means that you end up hanging out with the other parents, and they do the play dates with each other, and it's kind of this gentle reinforcement and way of building it. On the other hand, you've got preschools. I mean, we did a sort of spot survey, and some of them cost $22,000 a year in New York.
I have something to say about that. For me, being Jewish is expensive.
Yeah,
my fur coats alone, where I can only wear to temple. I'm kidding. But when you have children, they are a blessing, but they're expensive. And as they get older, they become more expensive. My feeling is, if I have the money, I want to give it to my kids. And I want to see them educated. And part of it may be also, it's because I'm Korean. And so every thought, every penny is for the kids. So they went to this thing called Kumon School. And while they were in Hebrew school, they also went to Korean language school. My feeling was, how much education can I give them? And how it just was part of the cost of having children.
But I agree with Robin. Do a birthright closer to birth.
Nice.
You know, I mean,
Nice.
so
I
that's
like
your
it.
new tagline.
I like it.
No credit needs to be given, but that's what you do. And facilitate that path for people who are choosing. I know a lot of people who opt to send their kids to Christ Church Nursery School rather than to another school. The education level is similar, but the price tag is not. And that's not right, and that's not what our priority should be.
Can we just focus also on the fact that early childhood Jewish education is also about education? It's not like we're only putting these skills and things that they're learning in the very narrow Jewish bucket.
Good point.
I
Very good
regularly
point.
use all the stuff I learned as a Bible scholar back in the day. We were #1 at regionals. I use that stuff. I even, you know, when I thought of it when you were talking about, you know, Ruth and Naomi, like that I first learned that story from my Bible stories for little children book.
You know, I'm glad you said that, because coming from a Christian background, my father had to drill into me all the Christian teachings. But I find that when they're 4 years old, they're so open to being they want to learn, and they want to please, and they want to please their parents. And they go home and they're all excited. They sing the songs that we teach them. Preschool is one of the best ages to teach and for the kids to retain.
But I think it needs to be a two-pronged plan. In addition to helping lower the cost, I think we need to train quality educators to make sure that these educators at their early childhood education, that they're getting paid well, because what they're doing will create a Jewish future.
So we have to send this clip out to the philanthropists.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, let's do it.
Problem solved.
This is, as I think we all know, the 50th anniversary of the publication of Betty Friedan's feminist Mystique. Okay, now we have to have true confession. How many of you have read all of it or some of it?
I read it, but I was in high school. That's a long time ago.
Wow. I read it as a teenager.
Yeah.
I remember pulling it down from the bookshelf, but I don't remember reading it. I just remember seeing it.
I'm living it.
I have to say, you know, I'm like, I'd like to believe as staunch a feminist as I can be, and I don't actually recall reading the whole book. The version I have is very thick and it's got very small letters, and I also felt like it was something I was just living and not and didn't need someone to tell me about. And yet here we are 50 years later. How far have we come? What do you think, Esther?
When I read it, it was almost reading the worst possible book, because it went totally against Korean teaching. You're supposed to be submissive. You're supposed to get married and have children. You're supposed to support your husband. So reading it was sort of, wow, this is like I'm reading. It's just not the right book for me to read, but I found it really exciting. 50 years later, have the women's, I don't think we're better. I think what it did, for me personally, what I see is it made women's lives more difficult. We have to work, we have to take care of the kids. We just have more to do. I wish there was a book for men, how to help the feminist woman, because they seem not to change.
That book is coming out. That's a big focus of Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In.
So tell us, Rachel, you've been involved in this.
I am. I'm sort of part of the launch team for the foundation around the book, which is about women and leadership. But one of Sheryl Sandberg's main arguments is that, you know, the only way that women will truly be able to assume leadership in the numbers that men do is if they are relieved of the default burdens of being the caregiver at home. That men have to assume responsibility as, you know, equal domestic partners in the home, and that is not yet happening, along with many other things that are not yet happening. So she pushes for a lot of different things in the book. For women, it's called Lean In, so for women to literally lean into their careers, to leadership, to taking risks, to pushing themselves forward and not holding back because of, you know, a feeling that maybe they ought not raise their hand, like all the things that hold women back. But that is a really big part of it in terms of sharing the domestic burden.
You know what? That's the model that we have in my house. We don't have children, but I work all the time. You know, I'm a congregational rabbi, and so if I thought I would do something one night, a Shiva minyan comes up or a funeral comes up, and my husband does the laundry, and you know, my husband often is one that does the grocery shopping, and he doesn't feel like he's less than. This is the way that we succeed as a couple, as a family. I don't know if that would have happened 40 years ago. People sometimes think it's odd when they sit around our Shabbos table and they say, oh, this is delicious, and I might have only had time to make one dish that week, but my husband might have made 4. And you know, they're like, oh, Aaron made it again, Aaron made it again. The older generation, if they're invited over, they just think it's so odd that the husband's even cooking. Whereas for us, it's just natural. I don't know how that would change if we expanded our family and had children, but at the moment when it's just the two of us, my husband does a lion's share of the housework around the house. But I'm grateful for him.
I find I liked being at home with my children. I kind of figured if I gave birth to my children, I wanted to take care of them. And my husband gave me the luxury to stay home. However, now that I'm older, my children are gone, it's difficult to go back to work. I thought I could easily go back to corporate. I was very good at that. I'm finding, I thought the women's movement was about choice. And I find now I don't have choice to continue with my career. So what I have to do is invent a new career, I say I'm
But you probably couldn't have done that 40 years, 50 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I have mixed feelings about that, because I do believe that it should be about choice. But as someone who has worked continuously, just taking very modest maternity leaves after having 3 children, I also kind of feel like I really paid my dues. I did all that stuff, and nobody gave any of this to me. And I'm of an age where I was the first woman, and certainly the first mother, in like almost all of my jobs, including the one I'm in now. And so I don't know. I'm really torn with these arguments. How much of it is government, society, institutional, the workplace, not creating family-friendly environments, not giving women other chances, but how much of it is us, as women, maybe not leaning in, as she said, and not working hard enough to push ourselves forward.
But I also find, this is just for me, I'm not finding a sisterhood. I find that in my career.
Look at where you are.
No, this is great. But I don't see this. What I'm saying is, say for instance, in my career choice of being a stand-up comic, I found it more difficult if there was a woman in charge than the people that helped me were all the old Borscht Belt comic men. They're the ones that were very excited. Even in business, when I was in corporate, the women who had leadership positions were not so, because I understand it was difficult for them to get this position.
And also there's been a very unfortunate dynamic, particularly, less so now, but particularly coming up as things change, where a woman assuming those roles meant, scrutinized much more. The stakes were much higher because if there was failure, then it was, well, we can't hire a woman. We tried that and look what happened.
But isn't that still true, though? I mean, look at what happened with Marissa Mayer with when she was saying, "Oh, I'm going to have a child and I'm still going to keep my job." Then people were aghast.
Well, there was an explosion of debate around that,
Yes.
but that was actually a huge sign of progress, because that was the first time that anybody had been debating about a huge CEO of a huge company taking maternity leave. So it's because usually women would ascend to those roles in their later years after they'd had children, where there was no chance we're going to be having them again. So we're definitely in a different time, which is so interesting. But I think that's one reason why you might have had those experiences. I also think the comedy world, more so than other industries, has been fraught for women. Consider the fact that Christopher Hitchens' essay in Vanity Fair, saying like that women aren't funny, called Women Aren't Funny, came out in 2006, and that it wasn't really until sort of a confluence of Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, and Bridesmaids before all these articles started coming out saying women really are funny, and that's in like 2010, 2011. So that's not a very progressive area, and I am sorry that you had that experience, but one thing that I have found that has made it really easy for me to step naturally into this area, or I wasn't educated in it, I didn't have formal training in feminism, just life, as you were saying. But it is the fact that there really is a sisterhood, and I do feel that, and I have really noticed that.
Or in the rabbinate even. When I first came to town, it was front page on the Jewish Week, first female pulpit rabbi in Queens. And that was my label for quite a while. I've stepped away from it, and now people just see me as the rabbi, which is fine, but I had to deal with that for at least a year. And now my colleagues see me as colleagues, and my congregants see me as their rabbi, but I needed that entree, that it was still so different for them. But fortunately, you were talking about sisterhood, I have a wonderful opportunity that I have so many female colleagues around, so it's helpful.
So we have just finished the holiday of Purim, hence the lovely hamantashen, which we will eat afterwards. And I've just got to ask you all, Esther or Vashti? I mean, who is your favorite character?
It's, when you think about it from a feminist perspective, suddenly for growing up, I always thought, like, Vashti, she was such a complainer, so like good, docile Esther was there to save the day. But Vashti was putting her foot down. I will not parade naked around before you and your friends. And I don't know, I'm sort of down with Vashti. But that's not to say that it should be an either or. I don't believe in a cat fight in the Bible.
Yeah, but obviously Vashti was not Jewish because I don't think she was clever. She fought, okay, fine, but she didn't win anything. She didn't gain anything. Esther was clever. Esther, maybe some people think, was docile, but she was smart. She knew how to get the job done. She knew how to save her people. Her story is really great. Obviously, I feel that I was in a former life Queen Esther. But I think that she is very powerful in a way she didn't have to scream or yell. She got to her king Ahasuerus in a very smart, efficient way. And I'm very proud of her.
Just like two different feminist strategies laid out right here.
Right in front of us. What do you think,
Yeah,
Jordana?
I mean, Vashti's known for saying no. And Esther is someone whom I was always taught to emulate, not just because she's Jewish, but because she's proactive. She did things, she said yes, not only to the marriage proposal, but also to helping her people when it would have been much easier not to. And so to constructively doing things, not just saying, no, I won't do that, but saying, yes, I will do this, I think that's a Jewish model that we should live up to.
That's wonderful. Do you talk about this in your synagogue?
Oh, absolutely. And we'll be talking about it. We have a lot of opportunities for learning over Purim, but I think I change with the year and where my head is, but right now I'm with Esther. You know, there's a section where she says, Kasher avadati avadati, and if I perish, I perish. When she ends up going to see the king for both of those feasts, she had a deep connection to God. She was a religious woman and she had faith, and I relate to that part of her.
But she was also lucky because King Ahasuerus was pretty much an idiot.
Yes.
I mean, so she was just smarter than the king. She knew how to do it. She also had a very great backup. She had Mordecai.
There's actually a midrash.
She had a network of men supporting her.
But that's why she utilized it. She used what she had. She knew what to do.
There's a midrash that says he bought his way into the monarchy, that he really just didn't have anything going for him except for money. So, go figure.
Well, on that note, unfortunately, we are at the end of yet another terrific salon. I want to thank our guests, Esther Goodhart, Jordana Horn, and Rabbi Robyn Fryer Bodzin. Rachel, and thank you for your wonderful contributions to this as well.
I'm feeling very Vashti today. It fucking got me excited.
I'm Jane Eisner, editor of The Forward. Please continue this conversation on our blog, The Sisterhood at forward.com. For everyone at the Jewish Channel, we thank you.
I'm Rachel Sklar from Change the Ratio. Happy Purim.